Hey, folks.
Hey, Mark.
Long time no see, Council on Aging members.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, John.
I think we have a quorum. Yes, no, maybe. 2, 3, 4. Well, maybe not. We have 7 members, Mark?
I think so. And I think we've got 4
We
here.
need 4, so I think we're good. Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? We got a lot on the agenda, and so if other folks join, that's fine. Is this a joint meeting as well, by the way? It is, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and call the recalc committee to order and take attendance of recalc, and then if COA needs to do the same, you can certainly do that.
It doesn't look like it.
No, not yet.
Okay. So for recalc, in attendance, I see John Parsons,
Here.
Nora Bucko,
Here.
Mark Doxler,
Here.
and John Sasso here. Okay. Does COA need to take an attendance?
No, let's see, we've got 1, 2, myself, and no, we're only 3. Oh, no, we're 4, but 6 is a quorum for us, so no.
Okay. All right. Do you want to wait, or you want to keep, or want we keep going?
I'd say keep going.
Okay. All right, great. I got way too many things open on my computer here. All right, so the primary purpose of this meeting, got a couple other items on the agenda, but the most important is to provide some feedback and review of the survey that the consultant put together. I just had it. Where'd it go? Sorry, give me a second, folks. There we go. Actually, let me, before we, I don't know if it's okay to do this. We do have minutes on the last meeting. That wasn't an item on the agenda. Are we allowed to approve minutes even though it wasn't on the agenda?
It's not the ideal scenario.
All right, well then we'll put it off and we'll add it to the notes for next time.
That's my bad. I'll add it for next month.
Yep, no worries. Thanks,
Okay.
Kevin. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? I guess who's taking notes on this? Is it?
Ron's not there.
All right,
I know.
so
This is UMass. We've got 2 people on our team taking notes, mostly for survey feedback, but we can take other notes too, if that's helpful.
well, I'll I'll open another window in my computer.
Excuse me, John, do you want to record the meeting? Would that help also?
Yeah, actually, that's right. So actually two things. One is how do we turn on the closed captioning?
I think I can,
Recording in progress.
I'm gonna send you a request and you can just click on it. Or whoever the host is, you should have a request in front of you now.
I did.
Got it.
Yeah, you go, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's now enabled.
All right.
Thank you,
So
John.
we get no worries. Thank you. So we got recording enabled and we got closed captioning. Okay. All right. Just shut this off on my. All right. Okay. So like I said, I'll go ahead and take some notes as well. I guess we'll just walk through this step by step. Did everybody, first of all, did everybody get a copy of the PDF survey from Kevin along with the meeting notice? Yes. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and if folks have questions or comments, why don't we start off with the start off going through this. Any comments or questions on the introduction at this point?
John, if you don't mind, I can sort of take, since we drafted the survey, I'm happy to sort of walk people through. I think it might be helpful too for us to sort of explain, why we're asking some of the questions and what we plan to do with it on the analysis side, just so you can understand the purpose of that. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, go.
And I
go
can,
ahead.
does everybody have it in front of them? I can share my screen and have it on the screen if that's helpful, or would people rather see each other?
I think sharing would be nice.
Okay, great.
Please share.
Sure. And Beth, my colleagues Beth and Sierra are on the Zoom as well, so they're going to be taking great notes for me and all of your feedback. So we'll be sure to get it documented in detail. So yeah, so that's really the way we typically do these kinds of conversations is, as John sort of explained, we're just going to kind of walk through it. And like I said, I can give a little bit of an explanation as to what we're planning to do with each question, and you can offer your feedback and comments. But that first, so as a reminder, this is going to be a survey that is predominantly delivered online with some print options. And we've talked, I think, in the past, and we have some plans for how we're going to make the print version available. So that being said, the formatting is going to be a little bit different on the virtual, the online version than you see here. And so we'll kind of work out those formatting details once we get the content sort of finalized. So I don't think we need to worry too much about page breaks and things like that at this moment, and really try to get the content in place. So the first two paragraphs, sort of the preamble, as I sometimes refer to it, is going to be on the landing page of the web version, and it's also going to be, as you see, sort of printed on the print version. And the purpose is to explain to people, why we're doing this, and sort of put it in context, but also to give them some important details like how long they should expect to take it, that their responses will be kept confidential. We don't want their names or identifying information. And then also being able to point them to where they can find the online survey, which I'm hoping we can embed it on the readingma.gov homepage, and also giving them the phone number at UMass to call if they would like assistance completing the survey. So that's really the purpose of that piece. Do people have reactions, feedback, questions about that?
I did. So you're hoping if they click on that website, the survey is right there. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there's a unique link to the survey that can be embedded in any kind of, social media or email or newsletters or other mechanisms for getting the word out. But we will also find a place for it on the homepage of the Reading website.
Okay. And then it says that you can leave a message if you'd like so you're actually going to walk them through this if they need assistance?
Yeah, so there's typically a couple of reasons why people call us. One is that they need help actually completing the survey. They don't have access to it online, or they haven't received a copy of it. So we have folks on our end who can walk them through over the phone. But there are other people, people have questions either about, why are we doing this, or, just sort of general questions. But yes, we would either walk them through it, or we would obtain their email address and send them a link directly if they're having trouble accessing it, that kind of thing.
Okay. So,
Could I ask a question at this time?
Sure.
Being maybe my age and my abilities, I'm a little concerned about how well people are going to be able to do this. For example, recently the town sent out an email that you would have to fill out to re-up for a committee, not this committee, another, the Trails Committee I'm on. I could not do it online. And I went to somebody who is a town employee who works with the town computers all the time, and that person couldn't do it either. And the answer was, well, print it and then bring it in and hand it to the town clerk. Is there any chance something like that could happen with this survey?
That it could be printed and handed back to us?
No, that it's not just simply easily filled out online.
Well, the link will take people directly to this. Once they click on the link, it'll take them directly. The first thing they'll see is Town of Reading Community Survey of Residents. They'll see this, and it'll sort of just lead them through step by step. They'll be able to do it on, you just sort of walk through it. So,
well, the point I'm trying to make, I'd have this form in front of me. It would
Yep.
say, what committee are you on? And I would want to type in Trails Committee, but
Yep.
it would not take the typing.
like a PDF. Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
I've had that experience too, John.
And I hope that whatever survey is coming out here does not have any type of a problem like that at all.
No, this is we're using Qualtrics, which is a it's intended for online surveys. It's fairly user friendly, and you go directly to the source, and it's made for inputting information electronically. So I don't think we'll have that issue. But I appreciate that. Marilyn, and then Mark. Marilyn, you're muted.
Thank you. First question is, we had talked about having one survey filled out by each adult in the household. I don't see anything even remotely suggest that that's how this should be handled. In fact, I see questions about, is there anyone in your household that X, Y, or Z? I think, and John Parsons had raised this issue early on. It's really important to get everyone's opinion, and there's no reason to assume that two adults in the household will have the same answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is intended for each individual resident to click on and tell us their views.
Could it say that in big bold letters somewhere? This should be filled out separately by each adult in the household?
We can certainly make the distinction that it's for each individual resident and not per household. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Mark?
Thanks, folks. John, I wrote down your comment in terms of fillable form, so I'll bring that back into town hall. Caitlin, in terms of the link here, so I'm assuming what you'll do is that in the survey, there'll be a direct link here to Qualtrics.
Yes.
You're not going to force people to go to the town website first, right?
Well, I'll tell you, so Qualtrics is wonky in the sense that it does not let us personalize our links. So what we end up with is this kind of long, complicated URL that it spits out for us. And so what we have found, and people instead of asking people to, so that can be embedded in any place, which is very nice, and people can just click on the hyperlink and it takes them directly there. For the purposes of the printed version, or so the link we would want to use to push out remote response. So anybody who's doing it online would click the link, it would take them directly there. And yes, they would not have to go through the Reading.ma. But if we were printing this, instead of expecting people to type in this long hyperlink URL, we would just defer them to the Reading website so that they could easily click the Qualtrics link and it would take them to that place.
Okay, so we just need to work that through Kevin and Jean with Jane or Kevin.
Right. Right. So on the online version, that if you prefer to respond online, please go to would probably be omitted from the online version, just since they're already have already gotten themselves to the online version. Great. Thank you. John? Sasser?
Yeah, just two quick questions. One is if if we do send, so our thought is that, at least at the moment, we have in our communication plan to communicate another postcard or something to that effect out to the field or to the residents. And as you just said, that, in those circumstances, you might necessarily not want them to try to type in that long thing, but go to the website. What about, so two things. One is, could we put a QR code on the postcard?
Yes.
And would this survey be accessible and usable from mobile, like from a phone or an iPad? Is that something that this would be able to be done on as well?
Yes. Yeah. So when I go in and look at the survey on my end, I actually see two views. I see the web view and I see the mobile phone, like what it would look like on people's phones and devices. And so, yes, it would be friendly to those kinds of things.
Okay. And just maybe this is a question for Jean or somebody in IT, where, just specifically, where might we want to put this link? Is this something that we'd actually want to put on the front and center of the homepage for the town, or would we bury it in the recalc page, or both?
Yeah, that's something that we'd have to work out where it would go. But we have a very capable communications team that I would have full and complete confidence in getting that right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some other towns have done sort of like I think they call them buttons or something, where it's almost like a little icon and you can embed the link there, and people, like on the homepage, people can click on it and go straight.
Yeah.
And it would only be for a couple of weeks. So
I think that's a great idea. Have a button has the link embedded in it would be a great way to do it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn. Oh, muted, Marilyn.
Sorry, I forgot my,
Oh, I think you muted yourself again, Marilyn. Oh. Marilyn. Oh, you're muted still.
I forgot my question, so
Oh, okay.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Old
All right.
age.
Sounds good. Okay, Karen?
So to John's point about people that maybe are uncomfortable online,
Yeah.
in the card that goes out, could we just say paper copies available at town hall, or one specific location that everyone would know, and that if they can't do it online, then they could find it?
Yes, yes, we can do that. And before I move on, John Sasso, your hand's up from before, or do you have another question? Okay, good. I just want to clear the queue before I move us along. So again, let's see, the deadline, we're talking about putting it out, I believe, September 6th ish, and it would be open for approximately 3.5 weeks. So pretty much the month of September it will be open. And again, that deadline will be printed on the, if people were to print the copy, it'll say that, but also it'll be on the online version. It is not a hard deadline. So we have to give people a deadline, but it's important, I think, for you guys to know, and for folks who are doing outreach for this process, that if people are saying, oh, I forgot to do that, or I didn't do that, and it's like September 30th or October 1st, they can certainly, we want to encourage them to continue to send it in, to return it and to send it in to us. But so the idea is that we will have that open. Okay. And then moving on to the first section. So one of the things I think, one thing we know is that people have it, especially with online surveys, they will poop out on us. They will start the survey and then they'll get bored or forget or walk away or whatever. So we tried to the extent that we could sort of lift up the information, the most important information for you all as a committee and as boards to the top of the survey. So we wanted to get just, if nothing else, if all they do is the first two pages of the survey, that's information that's going to be really useful to us. So we start off by asking about how long they've lived in the town, trying to get an understanding of the length of residency. And then sort of semi-related to that, it's about asking how important it is for them to remain living in Reading as they get older. I think one thing that's hard for us to get our heads around is, you know, we're thinking about building for the future and planning for the future. And sometimes, you know, it's important to do a reality check in terms of what people's, you know, if they intend to stay in Reading or if they have other thoughts. And then we give them sort of right in the beginning, we ask them about their concerns about their ability to continue living in Reading as they get older. And part of the reason why we do that up front is we're trying to just get sort of a snapshot before we give them a whole bunch of ideas about what would be nice. We want to just sort of hear what are their, you know, part of this is trying to meet the needs of the community and to sort of respond to their needs. And so we want to just hear in people's own words, what are the things that are concerning to them? And that can be helpful, not just to this process, but I think, you know, probably for other planning processes as well. So that's a write-in question that will be, you know, the online version obviously will capture that verbatim, and any paper copies will be recorded by us verbatim, and we will analyze those responses qualitatively and provide sort of some, you know, summarizations and sort of the themes that came out of that, as well as sort of the count of the number of times, you know, people talked about cost of living, for example. And then that last question is about, do you plan to stay in Reading for the next 5 years or more? So we're trying to get sort of a little bit more pointed about people's plans to be here for the next 5 years. So we're going to then get into the senior, you know, the future senior center or community center, but I want to stop and just sort of give people a chance to react to this section, which is trying to assess sort of attachment to the community and the neighborhood. All right. Well, then I'm going to move us along. Oh, Marilyn.
Marilyn's
sorry.
had her hand up.
Thank you. I remembered my question from
Okay.
before. And it was, is this a standard survey that you do in all the communities? Or has this been created from scratch for Reading? Or
It's
close to scratch, you know?
I was gonna say it's a little bit of both, Marilyn. We have a fairly standard survey that we start with in every community. And then we have through what we know about your specific goals
Okay,
and the conversations we've had, we have made tweaks to this
good.
based specifically on Reading, and expect that after tonight's conversation and perhaps next meeting's conversation, there'll be even further personalization. So there are some questions that we've asked in other communities, and there are some that are very unique to Reading.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And the other one is about your first question. I don't see it anywhere else in here. I can see why, if you want to know how attached they are to the town, you might ask how long they've lived here, but you could really love the town and have moved in last month. So I question that one, but more than that, I don't see that we ask how old they are anywhere in here.
Well, we should have that at it's in the demographics section, which is probably towards the back end of the survey. Let's see.
We can look for it when we get there. Oh,
Yeah.
I see it. It is. It's way in the back, your age range. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Again,
Thank
we're
you.
trying to sort of, if they just tell us if they quit
Yeah.
on us, we want to at least get as much information as we can that will be useful. And the duration of living in Reading, I mean, one of the conversations that we hear about a lot is, you know, sort of there's folks who've lived and aged and been in Reading their whole lives, raised their families in town. And then there are folks who have come to Reading in midlife or whenever to raise their families and to participate in the community. And what's interesting is when all of these questions, we have the ability to sort of cross-tab the results by that. So we're able to actually look at, do people who have lived in Reading for less than 15 years want different things or have different preferences than those who have lived? And obviously, a lot of times that does correlate a little bit with age,
Okay.
just in the sense.
In Reading in particular, you know, because we put in Reading Woods in the last 10 years, give or take,
Mhm.
and that's brought us probably well over, I'm guessing, 1,000 people over age 60. So they'll have a short number, but you
Yeah,
know, having
right.
opted out of the world to pick, you know, age restricted housing in Reading, they could be deeply committed, but they're not necessarily the same as someone who's 22 and hasn't lived long enough to be in the high categories.
Right,
So,
right. So that's how we
Alright.
would use it, is we would sort of group people by how long they've lived in town and then look at their responses and sort of see, do they want different things? Do they have
Okay.
different perspectives on this issue?
Okay.
And so that's one of the reasons why we ask it. So section 2, like I said, we're sort of getting straight to the heart of the issue. So we're asking about a future senior center or community center. You will see that throughout this whole survey, we refer to it as a senior center / community center. I know you guys have wrestled with that issue, and if that's doesn't sound right to you, we want to hear that. But that's sort of how we decided to refer to the recalc. We didn't go because I wasn't sure everybody would know what a recalc is. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up, so that's fine. Okay, so the first question is explaining that the town is considering a senior / community center, and we ask them to rank their preference for the following scenarios by giving each option 1 through 5, with most preferred being a 5. No, most preferred being a 1, and least preferred is a 5. So again, on the web version, this will be, drop down numbers. People will have to rank them, and then if it's printed, they'll have to number it. And so the options that we came up with, we sort of settled on is a combination of the, we want to, there's sort of 2 issues we're dealing with. One is like the space, the physical space itself, but also the purpose of the space, or the what is the space used for. And so we sort of arrived at this list. So the first option would be a senior center only with limited other uses during off hours, but really the sole purpose would be a senior center, period. The second option would be what we're calling a fully integrated community center, where programming and services is for people of all ages, has some town offices, and has shared space for all residents to use for programming and things like that. Similar, I think, to the Lexington model. Those of you who visited other communities, it's similar to that. And then the third option would be a community center with designated space and programming for older adults that houses some town offices and provides programs and other space for residents of all ages to use. So that's an instance where there's dedicated space for seniors to have programming and services, but it's embedded in a larger community center. And then the fourth option is to keep the existing center, make some improvements to it, and add programs off-site to sort of expand. So that's sort of the status quo plus option. And then we do offer a place for people to tell us if they have other ideas. So John has his hand up. John Parsons.
Yes, you, I'm sure, have been to a lot of senior centers. Do you really think option 4 is a viable option at all?
I don't, but I did hear in the second forum that we held at the library that there are folks, I don't necessarily think it's that viable, but I think there are people who may think that that's our best option. I mean, it's possible. It's not impossible to do to continue with the Pleasant Street Center and do some satellite programming. I don't think it's so anyway, it's one of those things where I felt like we needed to give people a place to make their voices heard if that's what they really believe. And I felt like we heard that a little bit at the second forum, but I'm open.
To me, it just seems like it would somewhat encourage people to go for a non-viable option. Just my opinion. I just wanted to chime in with that.
Yeah, the other way of looking at it is that if you have very low, if a lot of people agree with you that it's not a viable option, they're not going to select it, and then we will actually have evidence that suggests that there's not a lot of people who believe that that's a viable option, which is sometimes helpful. Marilyn, and then Karen. Marilyn, muted.
2 things. One, to John's point, I don't know that people are going to be in a position to know whether it is or isn't viable for option 4. If they see it there, I think they might think, oh, we could do it. There are plenty of people who love the senior center as it is and don't see its shortcomings. And if we have it worded this way without some caveat saying this still means it will not be able to fully meet the needs of Reading, I think they're going to say, yeah, that's what we've been saying. We love this place. I mean, there are people who do. It's their right and they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is on the first one, senior center only, limited other uses during off hours. I understand what I believe you mean by that, but someone who hasn't been in this discussion at all might not really know what we're talking about in the sense of what's a senior center only. I would advocate taking some of that language from number 4
Mhm.
and talk about it being usable to enough people to fully meet the needs of Reading's senior population, and add programs on other sites or whatever you feel appropriate. But I would put some meat on the first one so they understand it as what we envision as opposed to what's a senior center only. And because I would focus, if I didn't understand that, I would jump to the limited other uses during off hours. And I would think if I were the least bit confused, which since I can't even remember what questions I want to ask, you can imagine I might be,
Right.
they might be thinking, oh, there are only limited times I can use it. I would clarify
Yep.
and expand.
Okay, I gotcha. So we'll add some detail to option 1.
And I
Karen,
would ask on option 4 that you point out that that scenario will not fully meet the needs based on the 2017 study, even made better. At least I don't think it, since we all think it's not viable, I think it's fair to say it's very unlikely to fully meet the needs. Let's give it that so we don't rule out miracles. But
okay. Karen,
Yeah, mine was pretty much the same as what Marilyn said. That first one almost looks like the title because it's so small, and then you kind of like focus down to the
more
others,
detail.
and you don't really take that as on its own. So expanding that first one so it's spatially almost
Yep.
gives it the same kind of space and
Yep.
wording.
Makes sense. Thanks, Karen. Mark and then Nora.
Thanks, Caitlin. So a couple of things. I'm wondering if on the first one, it might be better to say a new center for seniors only, just to make it really easy and clear without a lot of words.
Mhm.
And number 2, Marilyn, I'm concerned. I don't want to be biasing people. I don't want to be saying this one works and that one doesn't. It's not fair. We're really looking for what people are kind of looking for. The needs are going to come out in the questions that follow. And that's really what we're trying to get at. If suddenly, I don't think people are going to vote for number 4, but if we worked out an arrangement with Walgreens downtown, would you want to just throw that one out and say, nope, can't do it? I'm not ready to say that. I'm not sure that we are as a group yet. So I'd just be careful and put it in, and I think it'd be clear to people that it's 2 locations. I don't like that. That's a fair assessment that for someone to say, no, I don't like it. But to say, no matter what, this won't work,
Right.
Depends on the needs.
yeah, I see your point, Mark. I still think the first one needs to be
Yes.
elaborated a little bit as to what it means.
Yep.
Agreed.
No, I agreed on that, definitely. And I agree, Mark, too, that we're trying to give everybody a voice here. That's part of the purpose. So even if we don't think it's viable, it's important if people, feel okay with that they have a place to do so. Nora.
Yeah, on the last one, it says more usable by more people. Now, we're still talking about seniors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This is a senior-only option?
Yeah, I mean, the existing Pleasant Street Center, I think their mission is, well, you guys know, in terms of serving residents 60 plus or maybe 55 plus.
Okay, so you're just saying more people could use it, more seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And you add programs, so they'll have programming off at these places, possibly? That's what this is?
Yeah, it's the idea that there's not much more you can do with the current Pleasant Street Center, but if you didn't want to build a brand new building, you could essentially do what you can to modernize it and then move some of the programming off site to try to accommodate more participants.
Okay, so am I assuming correct that this is like the low budget option?
Essentially. Mm-hmm.
Cheaper version? Okay.
Well, it's not assuming, we didn't get into newly built buildings or renovated old building. We didn't want to get into that because those are decisions that have to be made by, feasibility studies and things like that. So, but it is, I would argue, probably the cheapest option.
Okay.
John Sasso, anything else, Nora?
No, thanks. No.
Okay. John.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Mhm.
So I know we're all looking at this kind of struggling a bit. So I guess the thing that I'm looking at first and foremost is what do I really want to understand from this question? And I think the answer that I want to understand is, Do people want a separate senior center, or do they want a separate a community center? Or to your point, some community center with dedicated senior space.
Mhm.
The fourth odd, which I agree with Mark, I don't want to bias people. But I almost, for the purpose of this question, the fourth option actually falls under the first one in some respects.
Yeah.
From the purposes of trying to understand, what do we really want to know first and foremost? We don't necessarily, we're not trying to answer the question of how, right?
Right.
We're trying to answer the question of, do people want a standalone senior center, a standalone community center, or a community center with a wing for the seniors? And if we were to keep the existing senior center, that would actually be, saying that they want just a standalone senior center to some extent.
Right.
So I'm struggling. I don't necessarily have a good answer here, but I'm struggling because I really think the question that we're trying to ask ourselves, the actual charter of recalc is to try to answer that, salient question. What do people really want to see? And so I kind of see the keep the existing senior center. I would hate, I don't want to bias people, but I would hate everybody to select us and us still not know the answer to the question.
Well, I think that's important. And frankly, John, we struggled a little bit on our end too, in terms of trying to craft a question that people would understand, that would yield the information that we are looking for. I like a little bit where you're going in terms of, one way we could think about it is, the first line of the question is, the town of Reading is considering a senior/community center. So we've already admitted that the town is considering a new space.
Yes.
So by doing that, we can assume that that means we're not talking about the old space. So you could imagine, I could imagine a question that sort of maybe doesn't totally dump the fourth option, but really makes it about, okay, the town is considering considering future space. These are a couple of ways the space could be used. And we're not talking about what space. We're not talking about Walgreens versus a brand new building versus we're not there, but we're talking about, we've admitted that this isn't working and we're looking for new space. And here are some ways that new space could be used. It could be that it's for seniors only, period. Could be that it's for the whole community, all ages, with programming space and services. Or it could be the third being, it's a community center that has dedicated senior space in it, that kind of thing. And then the fourth perhaps would be, I don't know, we might have to tweak it a little bit. But anyway, to try to sort of get people to think about, this is about a future planning process. And so
I'm struggling, to be honest with you. I hear what other folks have said, and I'm not trying to bias anybody, but I want to avoid the how from the what. I guess that's the point I was trying to make. So
yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I'm struggling very much with this. So to me, the fourth option is sort of saying we're going to have a senior center only, but a distributed model to cover the additional programs that are required.
Yeah.
And so you're getting into the distributed model versus an integrated model, right?
Mm-hmm.
One location versus all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So it to me, 1 and 4 seemed like the same thing, except one says, oh, we're going to do it distributed, and one is just not clear what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think with some clarity, the intent for one is, that it would be essentially new space that would be for seniors only.
It would cover and have a lot more.
It would have all the programs and all the services in one location.
So, mean, people have said that the fourth option is inviable, and what, not to judge anything, but if the fourth option, which is the existing senior center plus a distributed model, if we decide that a distributed model is not viable, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure why we would say that it's not viable, because that's some communities do.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible to do. It can be done. It's whether or not, and it's that it would, the current Pleasant Street Center is not meeting the needs of the community, and this is trying to say, we could keep the space, for essentially make that about services and private appointment space, and the programming and the social stuff happens elsewhere throughout the community. I guess, so two things I want to say. One is that we will have an additional opportunity to review the survey, so we don't have to make all of these decisions this evening. But what I would like to, I want to hear from Nora and John, and then I also want to have people sort of reflect on, is this question something that we want to include in this survey? Is this level of detail important for the survey? Or is it something that we've heard about in the forums and we'll hear about on June 1st? I think, that's just one thing, it may be getting into this level of detail at the survey phase is not, maybe we're not there yet, but I think we can keep thinking. Nora? Oh, you're on mute, Nora.
Yeah, the only thing I'm thinking is that this is where I'd call you up and say, what are you talking about?
Yep.
I mean, it's not really clear to the typical senior, I guess.
Right.
What's going on. But anyways, the only thing that says houses some town offices. Now, why is that in there? And is that what currently is happening? Or is this something new? Or is this important? Or...
Well, I think it's trying to convey that the concept of a fully integrated community center would be that programs and services are for people of all ages, and it's not just the senior center that's there.
So town offices, is that helpful? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're not in town hall. They're going to be in the center.
Well, those decisions haven't been made.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just found that a little bit of a sidetrack, and I'm not quite sure what.
Yep. Okay. John Parsons.
The, back on section 4, the first 5 words are keep the existing senior center. Considering the fact that a huge majority of the people in this town have never even been in the senior center or the Pleasant Street Center, whichever we want to call it, how can they make a judgment on something they've never been in?
Well, that's true. Arguably, they've not been in any of the others because they don't exist either. So I think it's sort of, but yes.
But if something is new, they probably have an envision of it. But if they've never been in the Pleasant Street Center, I don't know. To me, it's just asking somebody to make a judgment on something they've never seen.
Yeah, and I think that's, when I say, maybe this question, this level of detail of a question is not something that's going to work in the survey. I think that that's a real option for us if we get through the rest of it and we think about the kinds of information we're getting. If that will be the kind of information that could be work that you guys have to do as far as the recalc committee to sort of take the information from the survey about what people want and desire and need, and to sort of work with yourself, I guess, to sort of determine what is it going to be fully integrated, what are the different options, that kind of thing. Because what I really don't want to do is confuse people, frustrate people, and get them to quit on question 5. That is not good. So we can come back. We'll hear from Mike and John Sasso, and then we can maybe move on and we can reiterate this question for our next conversation and maybe talk about it at that next meeting. Does that sound like a fine resolution for this evening? Okay, Michael?
I mean, one of the things that strikes me about this is that we need something in the, maybe in the preamble,
Mhm.
talks about how, the 2017 survey and everything else says the street center is inadequate. I'm not sure that message gets out to anybody.
Yeah.
And then without that, this ranking is difficult.
Mhm. Yep, okay. John Sasso?
Yeah, I was just thinking, well, just to quickly respond, hopefully between now and then we continue our efforts and communicate out what's going on. So I think we still have a big hill to climb on that. Something to consider. I think we should, this is just my recommendation, folks can disagree and we can take it up for a conversation at the next time. I think we should keep this question pretty simple. Do you want a senior center only? Do you want a fully integrated community center, or do you want a community center? And then I would actually advocate, given, I think Michael had suggested this, we have a secondary question that says, if you're thinking senior center only, is it a standalone facility, or is it a distributed network, or something to that effect? So we kind of break that off a little bit from, and then it just takes the whole question about whether or not one would take the existing center and do something different or not, because whether that's even viable or not, I don't think it, to your point, is something that the folks in the taking the survey are going to necessarily be able to communicate. But I think if they tell us that, hey, yeah, we want a senior center only, but we don't want it distributed all over the place, well, that's a good thing to know.
Mhm.
And I think that's a better, I guess that's how I would think about approaching this.
Yep.
So just for your consideration.
Yep, no, good suggestion. Thank you. Mark?
Sorry, just I want to kind of take part of what John said. I think if we ask you guys to relook this one completely,
Mhm.
simplify it dramatically. I don't think it needs lots of words. I think it can be very simple in terms of the choices.
Mhm.
And this question is core to why Recalc is here.
Yeah.
So it is a required question. This is maybe one of the most important ones we're going to deal with here. So I think letting you folks kind of take it offline, come back with a very simple version would be great.
Got it. Okay, will do. So then we asked people to tell us more about their preference, sort of why do they want it? What are they looking for? We give them an option to please tell us more about your preference for a new center, senior center or community center, which again, just an opportunity for people to sort of tell us where their thinking is. Then we get into preference for a location of that future senior or community center. So located in the downtown area, located outside of the downtown area towards Reading High School campus, located outside of the downtown area towards the Killam School campus, or another place. So we tried to sort of just give people a little bit of a reference, whether you want it downtown or sort of in one direction or the other. Thoughts on this? We don't want to name specific places because we don't know those specific places, but ultimately trying to decide whether people have a preference to be downtown or otherwise. Mark.
Thanks, Caitlin. I think that maybe we want almost a ranking here rather than only one choice, because I think it feels like you're looking for one choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we'd like to know is what's okay. Does it have to be downtown? Could it be out of the downtown? That's really the question I think we're trying to answer.
Okay, so ranking number 7. Okay, we can do that. Nora?
Yeah, just at Killam School, I'm not sure where is that
Well,
myself. So I don't know if you need streets or
that's good feedback, because if you don't know where it is, then it's likely that others don't either.
Right.
So if there are other, if those landmarks are not clear, if there are other landmarks, or if we just want to simply say outside the downtown period and not give people that level of detail, we can do that. Other suggestions for, it's not a big place, Reading. So
I want to jump in. I think Mark's right. We just need to, I think the core is, do they want it downtown or outside? I think
Okay.
that
So we
that
don't
would be
care.
my recommendation, because I'm not sure we really know where else we might be able to put it. So, but that's just the only other thing I was thinking, but unfortunately we don't really have a well-established bus route in town. So I was going to say, on a transportation route or something, but
well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think the thinking was that we heard that that's a big deal for people. And so it was trying to say, okay, people who live in this part of town prefer they want it to be, you know, they want it to be closer to their home or, you know, whatever. And so trying to figure out where people live, but we can simply locate it in downtown or locate it outside of downtown and give them another option to tell us if they have other suggestions. That's fine. John Parsons?
It would seem to me that just one category here could just be location is not an issue, or location doesn't
I don't
matter.
care.
Yeah, I mean, that's my opinion, but nobody would have an opportunity here to say that. They've got three choices. I suppose they could put it under other, but I doubt somebody, when they see other, would probably not think to put in, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. I tend, you know, I don't like to give people an out, a neutral out very, you know, because part of this is, we can on this one, you know, just if we do, if we give people a neutral out or a place to say, I don't care, they usually will take it just because they don't want to make the decision. And then we end up with a whole bunch of people who say they don't care. And then it's sort of like, well, okay, what do we do with that? So, but I think we can add another option that says something to the effect of location is not a priority for me, or something like that. Michael.
Yeah, I would take out the Killam School because that's a very particular place, and there's other options maybe down by the DPW area or other, you know, any other schools, but Killam is off to one side. And if the thought is that that's over by the skating rink in the town area, then I think we should say that rather than Killam School.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think from what I'm hearing, and just for this, you know, I think we'll scratch the sort of landmark reference, and we'll just have located in the downtown area, located outside of the downtown area. And the third option will be location is not important to me. And then another for people to tell us their ideas.
Right.
Okay. Jean has.
Yeah, I just, if you were going to list, I'm thinking more and more about locations that we've talked about. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think there was some discussion about what we refer to as the Eastern Gateway, but I'm not sure most people would know that, but we're down off of Ash Street going towards Wakefield, where the Reading Municipal Light Department is located. That's a redevelopment area that we've talked a lot about different ideas of where to put things. And I think at one point somebody suggested maybe we should be looking down there at some of the space that exists down there.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just a lot easier if we're not going to mention it, just downtown or further away.
Right.
That might be easier.
Yeah, I think it's hard, you know, to get into those kinds of details at this stage, because then people get their sort of heart set on things, or they think that something is an option. We haven't quite gotten there yet to sort of decide whether those locations are viable. So I think my gut is telling me to sort of simplify it and let people, you know, we may get, and we will, some people will write down all kinds of specific places, I'm sure, in the other option, and we will have that list of places where people are thinking, and that might be helpful to the group in terms of if there's some place you hadn't thought about, or that kind of thing. Michael?
Did Killam get on the list because there's some idea that in the Killam rehabilitation, there might be some opportunity to build something additional there?
No, it was really just trying to orient, you know, if you live on this side of town, you know, would you prefer some to go this way? Would you prefer to go that way? Would you prefer to be downtown? It was really just trying to give people a sense of.
Okay, I live on the other side of town, so get it off there.
Got it.
That's a joke.
I got it. Yeah, no, because we heard at the forums that people, you know, if it's across town or really far away with traffic and things, they might not get there. So that's part of it. Okay. Number 8 is another sort of heavy hitting question. So we know that cost is a huge part of this conversation, and it's not something we have a lot of details about at this moment, but in an attempt to get just a very high level read of what people's appetite or thresholds are, we asked about, please indicate if you would support a new senior or community center if it meant an increase to your household taxes by. Now we, just have some percentages here again, and we also give people an option that no increase, I would only support a new building if it came at no cost to residents. So this was our way of trying to gauge that. I think it's obviously a highly controversial topic, and if it's not something that you feel is important to know at this time, we can drop it. But we did formulate it thinking that it could potentially be useful. So we're open to this. Mike, is your hand up from before? Do you have something to say on this before I go to Marilyn?
Sorry, it's still up.
It's okay. I just never want to think I don't want anyone to think I'm ignoring them. Marilyn.
I just wondered if there's a time frame. When we did the library, wasn't it X amount of years? Your taxes would be up, so maybe, this isn't for the next 90 years because of this or something.
Yeah. Yeah, over some period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we don't necessarily know, and so maybe it's
even if you could say over a specified reasonable
okay,
period,
specified
something,
time,
something
yeah.
like
Something
that.
general, yeah.
Not forever.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea. Karen?
Maybe you just simplify it. Would you be willing for a tax increase, or you wouldn't support a tax increase to fund it? Because given percentages, by the time we take this, 2% might be adequate now, but 3 years from now, you wouldn't be able to do it for 2%, even though you agreed with 2%. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe it's just, would you be willing to pay for it or not pay for it at all?
Okay.
And then maybe a comment line.
Yeah. Mark?
Thanks, Caitlin. I'm back. Yeah, I just was finding my unmute button. Great to know. The problem, if we just ask the question generally, is that often what I'll hear from people is, well, how much? Small, medium, large? So I actually would favor having, if we're going to ask this question, I think we ought to get a drop more detail like you've got here.
Yeah. So I guess one question is, do we think that this piece of information is valuable to you all as you're making your plans, or is it just a nice to know?
I think this is valuable. I like the way this is approached. I think it's good. We should know, because Mark's right. People ask the question, what does it mean? How much?
Right. It's not quite a yes or no kind of. Okay. Okay. Well, for now, again, we're going to have another opportunity to look at the survey and have another conversation. But for now, it sounds like overall, we're going to hold on to this one. Okay. Number 9, would you support a new senior center or community center if there were revenue streams to offset the cost, e.g. rental of the facility, user fees, etc.? Yes or no? Marilyn has her hand up. Oh, you're on. Oh.
That's from before.
That's from
Sorry.
before. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so this is just trying to get at that. I think, we can probably assume that, of course, everyone's going to say, yeah, if there was revenue streams, that would be nice. But we're not sure. Mark?
I think we may want to make it clear if we're asking seniors to pay for using the center, or if we're talking about renting it to other people.
Right.
And that's where the revenue stream comes from, just to be clear who we'd be asking to pay.
Yeah. Yep. Jean?
Yeah, but I would word it as off hours rental.
Off hour rentals.
Then that way we know we're talking about, when the seniors and the users are not actively engaged in the center, it's otherwise just going to sit there.
Yeah. And I guess I might also ask, is this question is what we're trying to know, would you support having other revenue streams, or would it, is this, so I guess right now the way it's worded, I'm noticing is sort of, would you support a new senior center or community center if there were revenue streams that offset the cost? So the assumption is that would, ease the burden on taxpayers. but I'm also wondering, the other question that you could ask is sort of, would you support this new space being used to generate income by, rentals, because some communities don't necessarily want to be in the business of that. So I guess just clarifying that the way this is framed is sort of about, would you support it if there were these revenue streams that would ease the cost? Like if there was a plan in place. Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay. John Sasso?
Yeah, I struggle a little with this question because I think this is really referring to what I would call the operational costs of the senior center after the fact.
Yeah.
And we're really talking about paying for, at least up until now, we've been talking more about the building and what it would cost to build.
Yeah.
So I think I think, I forget, it was Mark or Jean that mentioned this, that who are we asking, what are we asking them to pay? Are you, I thought we might have a question on this later about, if you were going to use the senior center, would you be willing to pay
Yes,
for
we do have,
services? So
yeah.
I think those are certainly good questions to ask. Those help us programmatically understand. But this question's feels
a little premature.
It's a little premature because we're really talking about, we've been talking about paying for the senior center. I mean, obviously, if we rent the facility, 5 years from now, that's not going to help us pay for the center today. At least.
And even if, I got it. I agree, actually. So I might suggest that we dump this question for now, because we do have that question later on about if you were going to use it, would you be willing to pay a fee or a donation?
The other reason I think it's worth jumping is that I think you're right. Most people are going to say, sure,
Yeah.
right? Why not? If we can make some money while we're at it, and
then it's sort of like, okay, 99% of people said yes. So
I don't. I think we should focus on questions that we really want to get answered. I don't see this one as that critical, and I think it is a bit confusing given what we're trying to get at the moment.
Yeah, I tend to agree, John. So okay, so we'll scratch number 9 in the next draft. So number 10 is about which of the following types of indoor space would you prioritize in a new senior or community center? Please select no more than 5. So on the online version, we're actually able to limit the number. People won't be able to. They'll be able to select 5, and if they try to select more than that, they won't be allowed to. In the paper version, we don't have that level of control, so it may be that people ignore the instructions, which happens. But this is just again trying to dig into what's the space, the kind of space that people are really looking for. So we got a little bit in the details here in terms of kinds of space. Any responses? So we've got sort of the kitchen stuff, the cafe, sort of dedicated arts space, a shop space, so sort of woodworking or machine shops, multi-purpose space for small things, for large things, team exercise space, indoor exercise space with equipment, locker rooms or showers, self-care area, e.g., nails or hair, being able to have your hair and nails done, private space for one-on-one meetings, computer technology, library and periodicals, games and billiards, theater, movie space, lobby lounge for informal socializing, swimming pool, pickleball courts, or I would not use a new senior center. So we did sort of get into the weeds here, but that's, I think this also speaks a little, sort of to what you guys are trying to understand is how do people want to spend their time? So Marilyn?
I'm just wondering, you talk about I would not use in the bottom one, but the question talks about prioritize. Prioritizing and using are not necessarily the same. Is there a reason not to just word the question, which ones would you use most often, or something like that? And I'm not sure that most often really matters, as opposed to, I would encourage us not to limit it to 5. You might not use the games and billiards space a lot, but if you're going to use it and someone else isn't, that would be an important distinction. If I'm going to use it as my 4th choice instead of the first, I don't know, it's fine tuning something that's pretty open-ended.
Yeah, well, I think two things. One, the fact that there's a I would not use a new senior center or community center, that option is here because there's going to be people who have never been and don't ever plan on ever doing
Right.
anything like that. And we want, instead of them skipping this question entirely, because if they do that, then we call it missing data.
Right.
If we give them a place to respond, then we can learn that there's X number of people who actually say they don't plan to use this space.
But that wasn't my point about it. You use the word use in the
Mhm.
bottom and you don't use the word use in the question. It's prioritize. And
Yep.
using and prioritizing are two different things. I
Yep.
would encourage you to make it, which ones would you use? And I wouldn't limit it to 5 personally.
Okay, and then the other issue with letting people, we can let them sort of select as many as they want. What we know happens is that people will say, "Oh, this all sounds great," and then we end up with no priorities because all of them are 95% of people say, "Yes, I would prioritize all of these things," and so offering, trying to get them to limit their priorities. The idea is not everything can be prioritized. We're trying to push them to sort of tell us what's really important to them. So we can remove that select no more than 5, but I would just say that my experience would suggest that we would then end up with everybody wants everything, and it's not super useful to you all as a group. But we can continue that discussion. John Sasso?
I was just going to suggest that we give the folks an opportunity to actually prioritize this list, meaning instead of it being check marks, let it be 1 through 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that would give us, because you're right. I mean, I look at this list and I'm like, I couldn't pick 5. I think everybody would say we think all of these have some relative priority, but I think it would be good to ask
Rank
people
order.
to put them in order. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Some head nods on that. Michael Coltman?
Yeah, I agree with the comments about prioritizing it all down. It would be wonderful if we could get this listed sort of an increasing cost kind of thing, but and I'm not sure that's possible. One thing that you use the words multi-purpose space for large group activities, small group activities, team exercise for basketball and tennis, and then pickleball courts later on. I think that it would be better to say a multi-purpose space for team exercise, basketball, tennis, pickleball, because it's all in the same space. If you can do basketball, you can do pickleball or tennis, if it's big enough.
Right. Got it. Thank you. John Parsons?
On the 6th one down, which says multi-purpose space for small group activities, and then way down towards the bottom is games and billiard space. Something that's very popular in Reading is cribbage and bridge and mahjong and rummikub or whatever the heck that is, and chess. I think somebody, if they were looking at this and prioritizing, they would say, gee, billiard space sounds like it's going to be a pool room where we wouldn't have tables to play cribbage or bridge or whatever. And maybe under the multi-purpose small space, something could be mentioned, like card games or board games or something like that, just so somebody could put that as a priority.
Yep, I got it. Yep, those are things that are important to, people will be looking for those words. Got it. Jean?
Thanks. Yeah, so for me, the one thing I would pick is not on the list is my Zumba. And I think you maybe mean to say that under indoor exercise space, Zumba, yoga.
Yep.
Or
sort of group exercise class kind of
group
thing.
exercise. Yes.
Got it.
Exercise that doesn't feel like exercise.
Right. Exercise that doesn't include equipment.
Yes.
Got it. Mark?
Just wanted to kind of support your point, Caitlin. I think we're not looking for this to be the definitive list of things in the center.
Yep.
But what we are looking for is to see what really resonates very strongly with people. So if we're going to ask people to prioritize, I think that if you ask them to prioritize the whole list, it's going to take a half an hour.
Right. We'll want to consolidate.
Too much. So maybe just picking if 5 is a good number, that seems very reasonable. This just the top 5. And again, what we're trying to do is see where there are lots of people talking about similar things like, indoor activity
Right.
space or things like that.
So Mark, are you suggesting we consolidate on the front end? Because we can also consolidate on the back end with the, in terms of being able to talk about where people.
So I was thinking more that you'd ask the question, so you've got 20 things here roughly, or maybe it's going to shrink to 18. I think asking for 5, and then either you check all 5 that you want, or you write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it stops.
I see.
But not going through the whole thing.
Yeah. Got it. All right, Nora.
Yeah, I wasn't clear. So are they ranking them?
The way that this is currently written is they are not ranking. They are simply selecting the 5 that are most important to them. But
Okay.
we have talked in this meeting about shifting to a ranking.
Ranking is a hard
It is
thing.
hard. It's asking people to do math
like
and
you
stuff.
really
Yeah.
gotta, it's like you need another piece of paper.
Yeah.
But how about 7
Why?
instead of 5?
Why?
Yeah, well, I think we want to consolidate the list and let people maybe not have to do a lot of complex thinking. So we'll take another pass at this
Okay.
and come up with something a little bit clearer for the next iteration. Michael?
So, yeah, I really appreciated Jean's comment about Zumba
Yep.
and dancing. And I would just say that the multi-purpose team exercise space or whatever, basketball, tennis, pickleball what's unique about that space is it requires a high ceiling.
Mm.
And Zumba, line dancing, lots of other that kind of exercise, yoga, does not require a high ceiling and is much more it can be integrated in more centers in Lexington and Melrose that I went to. So
yeah, so keeping those kind of separate as far as choices so that we have a sense. Got it. Yep. Okay. We also we talk about outdoor space. So we again, we're talking about people's preferences and we're just trying to hear what people are looking to do. So my guess is that there's probably a similar sentiment to number 11 as there was to number 10, which is perhaps to consolidate things a little bit and so that people don't have to feel like they're only picking 5, but yeah, so outdoor space, we did include parking spaces as part of outdoor space because that is does contribute to the sort of physical footprint of the center, but then also places to eat outside, gardening, outdoor exercise, outdoor team exercise, grass fields, hockey rink, rollerblading, pickleball, playground, dog park, swimming pool. We put it all in here. So Mark, do you have your hand up a new time?
Yeah, just a quick point. So we do have an ice skating rink in town, and I'm wondering if that would be redundant in this one we're taking out.
Probably. Sounds like, I don't think most people don't have one, so got it. Okay, so we'll remove that. Do you have a dog park? No. Okay.
every park.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay, so then number 12, we move into some of the more sort of amenities or other features. So we talked about sort of specific spaces indoor, specific spaces outdoor, and then we ask about these other qualities that people would prioritize. And here we're asking them to select more than 3 or no more than 3. So things like having door-to-door transportation to and from the center, having no or little cost to programs, having programs and services that are better suited to my interests, the facility being open in the evenings and on the weekends, ample parking, dedicated space for older residents, but open to all residents, programming that integrated residents of all ages or more remote programming. And then we also give them an other option. So the idea here is that there are sort of these other aspects or features of a center that would sort of prohibit or, either encourage or discourage people from participating. So we're trying to get at that. John has his hand up.
Yeah, I was struggling with making the comment on question 11. I kind of, again, I'd like to try to consolidate this, but where we ask about ample parking here in 12, I'm almost thinking, should we get rid of parking in 11? I
In
mean,
the
we're
outdoor
gonna have,
space.
we're gonna have to add parking, I mean, we could add things like, does that mean we should have handicap spaces? Well, of course, right? Or,
Yeah.
what about a place for someone to drive up underneath a covered area to drop people on? I mean, we can add all sorts of things. I was just thinking the functional things that you asked for, those are really important. I'm less concerned about some of those other structural things. But that's if folks think it's still important, you can leave it. But to give us a better sense, I don't think that necessarily adds anything.
So we're talking about removing parking from question 11
Yes.
as an option.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what's the other?
No, that's fine. That's it.
That's it.
It just, you
It's
add ample
redundant.
parking to 12. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that kind of, when
Yeah,
I
and it
saw
sort of
that-
stands out in the other one as sort of, it's not a, everything else sort of is related to sort of programming
Yeah.
types of things. That makes sense to me. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. So we'll remove parking from number 11 as an option. And then question 13, we are just asking if a new space was developed, how likely would members of your household use the facility? And part of this wording is, there's a lot of people who are gonna take this that are nowhere near calling themselves seniors and have a lot of, sort of challenge, say they would have, I think, anyways, it's trying to say, is this, would somebody in your home, would this be useful to someone in your home? So we're not necessarily calling them out and asking them to tell us if they themselves would use it, but and the reason for that is a lot of people will just not be, they'll just say, oh no, I'm not going to use that. And Marilyn, I know you made a comment about this earlier about this is a survey that's going to each individual, but it was worded like this to try to avoid some of the stigma related to using a senior center, but we can certainly change that. Marilyn, do you have something to say?
I had a question on 12. 12 seems to me to address several different categories of things. So I don't know what sense I would make of it. For me, for example, where is it? The facility being open in the evenings or on weekends makes or breaks whether I have any access to it at all. So it really doesn't matter whether there's parking or transportation. It's sort of transportation is one issue. Hours is another issue. And accessibility is probably another. It's not just residents of all ages, but a much broader range. I don't know how you want to word it. But people of all different levels of mobility challenges or disabilities, if you want to call it disabilities, as well as vision challenges and hearing challenges. So there's multi dimensions to what you're getting at here. So I would break it into at least 3 different questions personally to get at those issues separately.
All right, we can think about that. I mean, I think we're trying to, it is a little bit of a catch-all, but it's about sort of, okay, we've asked you about the specific spaces that you would like, and now we know that these are sort of barriers, potential barriers to accessing or to participating. And so
no, we really didn't ask if there were barriers. We didn't ask if you've got an electric scooter and need
no, right. Right. No, I know. It's not about barriers, which is why we didn't call it barriers. It's really just about the other features or the other aspects of a senior center that would be crucially important to folks. And actually you answered it. You named your 3 in your comment, but we can certainly play around with parsing those out.
Okay, because they're really, these are not either ors. So to have to pick 3 out of things that aren't either or at all it's sort of forcing a false answer.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we've got 13, which is about how likely, Karen's got her hand up.
I was just going to say, to Marilyn's point, if it's a new facility, it's going to have to meet all of that accessibility and those things. We can't build it without covering those bases.
Mhm.
So it doesn't, I don't necessarily think you need to break each individual out, even if you were to retrofit the Pleasant Street Center as a last resort, it would have to be brought up to code in order to build
Everything.
or make any changes.
Yeah, so I mean, accessibility is not a question. It's a fact that has to be addressed no matter how things move forward. So I think this is more about trying to understand what are some of the things that will be sort of deal breakers for people. If costs are high, or if there's not enough parking, or if it's not open on the weekends, then they're just not, those are things that they really want to focus on.
Right, that's the point, Caitlin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I agree. I think it's a good point. I see what you're saying. I still think there's at least two separate dimensions though, because the hours it's open is an exclusionary issue. It's not a preference issue. So I would still break it into at least two dimensions.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts, any issues with number 13 about how likely would members of your household use the facility? Okay. I'm going to do a time check here. I know you guys have other things on your agenda. Do we want to pause and pick this up at the next meeting, or should we keep going?
I think we should keep going,
Okay.
Caitlin. We want to make sure we give you
Yeah.
all the feedback you need. The stuff that's on our agenda, we can, if we have to push things off, that's fine. There's nothing urgent or critical. It was more just a follow up on action. So I think we
Okay.
should keep going and get through this to try to give you as much feedback as we can so you can make your changes and then come back to us
Yep.
later.
Got it. Just want to make sure I'm not forging on with no one behind me. So, okay. So then moving on to programs and services. So this is not just like what kinds of space do you want, but what kinds of things do you want to do inside that space? So we first ask about how frequently you use programs or services offered by the Pleasant Street Center. And we do that because we want to break apart. We want to be able to say that people who've never been to this Pleasant Street Center want these kinds of things, and people who are at the center want these other kinds of things, and to sort of be able to sort of cross tab that stuff. So it's really about what we're going to do on the analytics side, not necessarily, describing people too much. So this is a skip. So in the online version, it will not look like this. It'll sort of just naturally push people where they need to go. But if they say that they participate at this Pleasant Street Center never, or only a few times a year for special events, then we kick them to asking why they don't use the space. And again, that's to sort of try to understand what are some of the reasons why people, and we know, we know there's a lot of issues, but also to understand, awareness and things like that. So the reasons why are things about, I don't need it, I don't know what's offered, I'm not old enough, I don't have time, I'm not interested, I participate elsewhere, I don't have transportation, I cannot find parking. So they're pretty basic types of reasons. And then we also offer people a place to tell us whether they have other reasons. Marilyn, did you have your hand up? Or
Yeah, and it's the same issue again. And because this is talking about what you do now, I think the exclusionary issue should be built into this. Some people just aren't able to comfortably make use of the building. It may be literally possible for them to do it, but it may not be physically a comfortable environment if they're in a wheelchair or something like that. And the hours is another one for those of us who work 9 to 5. It's just not an option. I'd go if they were nighttime hours.
Okay.
And again, that's just in the current building. And I understand the accessibility issue will go away with the new building.
Yeah, so we can add, hours are not convenient, hours of operation are not convenient. And then we can add something about, I can't.
Yeah, it's not a question of convenience. It's a question of possible. It's an exclusionary policy.
Okay. Mark?
Just kind of an overall thought for a second also. We're in need of making this manageable and handleable by people. And we're already at 40 plus questions.
Yeah.
It feels to me to be very long. I doubt that it's a 15-minute exercise. It feels like it could be longer. And maybe what we should do, to John's point, is, let's go through everything. Let's give you some feedback. But I think one of the bits of feedback we're going to need to deal with ourselves is answering the questions that we have to answer right now.
Yes.
And others, the nice to haves, we may have to kind of make a list of nice to haves and say, next time, or it'd be, if we can fit it, it'd be great. But we want to make that, we want people who take the survey to go through it and answer it well, and not fatigue. And not, stopping is terrible, but fatiguing is also pretty bad. So I think we want to just keep that in mind a little bit. So let's, make sure we're kind of figuring out where things aren't quite right, but also be able to delineate, this is a must have, and this is a nice to have that we should think about putting out a little bit later.
Yep. Completely agree, Mark. And I think that's something, that I would encourage you guys to reflect on, sort of what are the things you absolutely need to know, so that we can, at maybe the next iteration, sort of talk about, get to that length issue and sort of decide what can go and what needs to stay. So that sounds like good homework for you all between now and the next meeting. So then we do ask about, have you ever traveled to senior community centers in other towns to participate? Yes or no? If yes, we asked for what reasons they went to another center, again, trying to understand what is it that people are after? What are they trying to do? What are they? So again, this is possibly something that's not a must-have, but it is, I'm curious, as it is, do people have questions or thoughts about the way this question currently is stated? Oh, Jean?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's important because we keep saying in a lot of the presentation materials that, people are going to other centers. And that's something I think it would be nice to really have a sense of how
much
many
that's happening.
and is that just a few people that we know of or hear about or that tell us, or is it really a big trend?
Right. Okay, so then question 18 and 19 are a little bit similar in some sense. So question 18 is about services. So sort of the services. So not social programming, but these are sort of the functions of elder services. And so we are asking people to rate the importance of the following services to you or to a member of your family. And so this includes, assistance with applying for state and local programs, accessing transportation, wellness, nutrition programs, professional services like health insurance, counseling, or tax help, support groups or caregiver referrals, and general information referrals to other services and support. So the idea is that these are things that already are happening, but we want to understand what are people's, what's the level of importance of each of these things as we move forward and think about the new center. It also is an indicator of need, I think, to some extent, in terms of people saying that it's really important to them to have caregiver support. Then we can make the inference that that's something that there's a need for that in the community. So that's different than 19, which is talking specifically about your interests and preferences, which of the following programming or types of activity would you prioritize in expanding and writing. So the recognition is that some of this already happens at the Pleasant Street Center, not all of it happens, but we're really talking about what do people want to prioritize in terms of expanding and continuing to do in the future. So this is, informal ways to socialize, arts, technology. Again, it's not about the space specifically, it's about what happens inside the space. So day trips, performances, health programs, fitness, volunteer work, that kind of thing. So we did sort of delineate between the services and the programming. John.
Yeah, just real quick, going back to Mark's comment. I mean, I think these are really important questions to understand. I'm just not sure how well they address the question of how we would know how this impacts our core mission at the moment. So I think, I guess if I was Elder Services and COA today, I'd want to know the answers to all these questions now,
Mhm,
regardless of whether we build a new center or not.
mhm.
Just something to think about. I'm not going to make any more pronouncements about it, but in the long run, I'm not sure these necessarily, especially to having this many questions. I do agree we're getting kind of long. So I think we can leave it for now, but, and they're really great questions and really good information. I just don't know if they're going to help us with what we need, for this.
Yep.
But certainly, I mean, we should take these questions and ask them today, so to
Right.
speak. So anyhow.
Yep, got it. I hear you on that. John Parsons?
On section 18, as far as I'm concerned, that's probably about the most important section I've seen so far. Everything we talked about before is great. It's a lot of fun. It's wonderful. It's games and it's have a good time. In my opinion, the most important work that is done down at the center is the work that's done by the nurse advocate and by the caseworker. And 18 is starting to get into those particular areas. And I just think the work that they do is the most important work that's done down there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would echo both Johns, actually, because I can imagine, maybe we keep 18 and I think 19 is potentially, we ask about a lot of this programming space in the previous questions. And so there may be a significant overlap there, but as they stand now, we're going to hold on to them and we will, I think, have that conversation about length and cutting questions at our next convening. So we do ask about, we know that one of the major reasons why people don't participate at senior centers is they don't know what happens there and they don't know how to find out. So we do ask about people's preference for information about the activities and services offered by the town generally. So we're not limiting it to the Pleasant Street Center. And we have a number of things here. So again, this is possibly a nice to know and not a must have. But I think one way it could inform your work is through, the outreach efforts that I know you are working on in terms of trying to get information out about recalc. So any thoughts about this one? Okay. Oh, Nora. You're on mute, Nora.
Sorry. The local news, isn't it the Chronicle? Or Daily Times Chronicle?
The Daily Times Chronicle.
I mean, the Reading Post, I don't know if that's considered the local newspaper, is it?
No. Okay. You're the locals, so so is it the Chronicle is the local?
Yep.
Okay, we can change that.
And the Reading Post, I think, is the online version. I could be wrong.
It's actually a separate
Yeah, it's a
publication,
separate-
online only
yeah.
publication.
I think more people read the Post than read the Chronicle these days.
No,
Well, we
I
can-
know, but
Yeah.
Find
Well,
you
we
another
could even
category.
include both. As we could have one be the Reading Post, an online paper, the Reading Post, and then local print paper, the Chronicle. I think that's fine. So we'll make a note. Michael?
Are you trying to find out whether people are computer literate? I mean, I know seniors who don't have computers, don't have email, don't have smartphones, and don't
Yeah.
get information any of these ways. So
Right. No, that's not the primary purpose of the question. I think it's more about generally wanting to know where people get information about what's going on in town, and it might tell us something about their tech savviness, but really it's about sort of where do people, if we're trying to outreach about the new center, if we're trying to build up usership, that kind of thing, where should we be investing our energy in terms of getting the word out?
okay. Are we going to get to their tech savviness later in the demographics?
Well, we have a question that we do ask. I'm not sure that it made the cut into this draft, but we do ask about that in other work that we do. So we can talk about that as a possible add-on. Only if we take something away though, or lots of things. Okay. So transportation, again, we're trying to understand do people drive? Do they limit their driving? And part of this, it seems like just like, okay, that's nice to know, but how does that really help us in making the decision? I think, we heard at the forums and we know that, people's ability to get around has a lot to say. It has a lot to do with what they're eventually going to need from the town to support that, support their ability to live independently. It also tells us whether, how dire and how important having sort of like a shuttle transportation or a local transportation option is for people. So one of the ways, so we ask about what best describes your driving status. People say they drive with no limitations. They could say I limit my driving, meaning I avoid driving at night during bad weather in unfamiliar areas, or I do not drive at all. And that helps us, again, we're parsing out, we're able to use that to crosstab sort of, okay, non-drivers, people who don't drive, this is what they need, and this is what they're looking for. People who drive with some limitations look like this, versus a vast majority who will say that they drive with no problems. So that's how we would use that question. And we would use it to sort of crosstab number 22, which is about difficulties you have in meeting your transportation needs. So if somebody does not drive or they drive with limitations, we would then be able to see, okay, what are the barriers that those people are facing? Is it that they, need flexibility in planning, that they need evening and weekend transportation options, that kind of thing. So again, those questions would sort of work in tandem with one another. So reactions to this, questions? Okay. Again, these are things, as you're reflecting on what are the must need, the absolutely need to know things, you can be thinking about that. So relatedly, we asked about whether or not people had to miss or have to reschedule a medical appointment or a social or personal appointment because of a lack of transportation in the last year. Again, trying to understand sort of what is the seriousness, because I think there's an assumption that, okay, we have transportation, therefore we're meeting the needs of the community, when really there's a lot more to it in terms of the type of transportation that's available. So for now, we'll hold on to those, but we can talk about cutting at the next conversation. So section 5 is the social connection, sort of social relationship section. We ask about where else people go for informal gathering and recreational activities. So again, trying to understand how the recalc would potentially fit, sort of where else do people spend their time? And so the library, Pleasant Street Center, the YMCA, a gym, parks or green spaces, restaurants, cafes, churches or faith communities or other. 26 is about, do you know who to contact in Reading if you or someone in your family needed help accessing social services, health services, or other municipal services? Again, trying to get at that communication and awareness issue. How much do people know about what's going on and what is available to them in the community? And similarly, 27 is about sort of their level of agreement with the statement that local policymakers consider the interests and concerns of older residents. So these 3 questions are sort of trying to understand sort of how people feel connected to their community. How much do they know what's going on? They feel like they are part of that community. And similarly, do you know someone living within 30 minutes on whom you can rely for help when you need it? This is sort of a proxy for social isolation and trying to understand, are there people in the community who, if they don't have somebody living within 30 minutes who they could rely on for help, sort of maybe they fell in the middle of the night or they broke a leg and they need help getting around, or, sort of that emergency type of thing, understanding that puts people at risk for not only isolation, but also possibly, they're probably going to call 911 or call another local town service. And then the last question in this section is about, would you ask a neighbor for help if you needed assistance with a minor task or errand? Again, trying to understand sort of how people feel connected to their community. So again, this may not be the must-have section, but I'm curious if people have reactions or thoughts to this section. Mark.
So I think your point from before was spot on. I think there are going to be some areas in here that we agree we would love to know.
Yep.
But perhaps it's not, the survey isn't the right spot for many of these. Another survey probably would make a lot of sense, however. Separate.
Yeah.
It just isn't helping us kind of get down the path on recalc necessarily. And I think if we kind of take that offline and kind of all think that through a little bit, that'll be helpful.
Yep, got it. Michael.
So my one concern is question 27. That I think these are good questions about how people are viewing their community and how they get, services and other things. Are they comfortable with neighbors, all that stuff?
Mhm.
I'm concerned that, ask about local policy makers that they're just going to vent their political views on things, and that's not really I'm not sure what meaning that is to getting that answer.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, it's a relatively close-ended question. So I think it's about just trying to understand, do older adults, do they feel heard? Do they feel like and I mean, one could argue that this whole project is a big indicator that yes, yes, they are being heard and recognized. But in general, we use this as a way of sort of understanding, do people feel like they know where to get information? Do they feel like people, that the town is paying attention to aging as an issue? Do they have people they can rely on? So it's sort of this more global sense of whether they feel sort of seen and heard in their community. But so there isn't necessarily a place for them to vent. They could strongly disagree, and that's their perception. So anyway, whether or not the information is useful to recalc, I think is the question. But I hear
That was my idea.
What's that?
I was just saying, I'm not sure it's useful to us.
Yeah, I can see that. John Parsons?
I'm just kind of piling on. I just want to say I strongly, strongly, strongly agree with Mark's comments on these questions.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the focus.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Caregiving, we ask about whether in the last year you've provided care to someone. If yes, we ask about how hard that was for you and what kind of condition did that person need care for. Again, the idea being that being able to put data to these issues will sort of indicate the prevalence and the need for services, support, adult day programs, sort of the services and supports that are offered potentially by the Elder Services Division. So that's sort of the thinking here, is to understand, is this an experience for a lot of people? And if yes, then that would suggest that there is a need for caregiver support, respite, adult day health programs, that kind of thing, which would potentially be integrated into a new space. And then 33 and 34 are about physical health, whether or not that limits your ability to participate in your community or whether you need help with things around the house. So again, it's about trying to understand really the need of the respondent in terms of the programs and services that could be available to them. John Sasso?
Just a quick comment, maybe going back to some things Marilyn has presented in the past that, and I don't know if we want to get into it, but when you talk about, I think part of the need, if you go down to these conditions, I'm just wondering, the 33 question, you've kind of asked it, do you have an impairment that limits?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's related to that, or if you wanted to, if yes, what is that, or what is the thing that help? I'm just trying to think, we want to get to, like, if someone says, oh, well, we're hearing impaired and we really need, assisted hearing assisted devices. It'd be nice to get an assessment. I don't know how we tease that out of this. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, to have more detail about so you can identify more what the solutions could be to help them participate in the community. Yeah. Marilyn?
I just agree. That would be helpful.
Got it. Okay, so some, we'll take a stab at trying to pull out a little bit of detail, not too much about sort of what the impairment or condition is that limits people's ability. And then we're into the last section, which is demographics. So again, we ask about gender identity. There will be a space in the other category to write in. So there should be a space there for people to write in. And then we ask about age range. Again, that's again, just, be able to look at how responses differ across different age groups. And then we do ask about employment, their employment status, again, to sort of understand if people are still working and assuming a lot of folks are. And then the last sort of substantive question is about, it's our way of identifying sort of economic insecurity. So we're asking people to agree with the following statement: I have adequate resources to meet my financial needs, including home maintenance, personal health care, and other expenses. So that's a way, we're not going to ask people about their income or anything like that. This is just a way that we're able to sort of identify how prevalent that sort of economic insecurity is. And then a last question where people can sort of tell us their other thoughts or comments about the future of the Pleasant Street Center or a potential new center. So this is a place where we could and would or add something about, do they have internet access at home? Do they have a smartphone? That kind of thing. If that was something that people felt would be important to know, we do have a question about that. And then they would be thanked and they would get my contact information again in case they had questions or reactions or just want to tell me what they thought of the survey, which they will do. What I'm hearing, so we got a lot of great feedback this evening, a lot of detailed stuff. I think the overarching question for the group is to really reflect and say, what are the things that Recalc needs to know to move forward with your endeavor? We can do some thinking. Sierra, if she's still here, I'm just making a mental note. We can do some thinking about what an ideal length would be for an online survey. We tend to do a lot of mail surveys, and so those there's a little bit more room to be lengthy, but we can do some work on our end to sort of decide what we think what the capacity is for sort of an online questionnaire. So we'll do that. Marilyn?
Just back on the question about the disabilities,
Yeah.
I would word it as, do they pose a challenge to you as opposed to they limit what you can do? Because you can probably do anything if you've got the right supports.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say challenge instead of limit, because limit implies we couldn't fix it, but we could, maybe.
Okay. John?
I think there are a lot of great questions here. I think it's a wonderful job you've done. But I think there are an awful lot of questions in here that are really more valuable to Elder Services than they are to Recalc. So I think quite a bit could be cut.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think that is, our usual business is that of needs of senior centers. So you're seeing a lot of sort of our usual stuff in here. And so this is a good reminder, I think we can think about it too. And I think you all can really nail down what you absolutely need to know. I think the other thing that's important for you to reflect on is if there is any aspect of this work that we did not cover at all, like if there's some area of the work that we tried to, anyway, if there's something missing that you wanted to be sure to know, that would be something else to think about as you're reflecting. But otherwise, we will plan to be at your next meeting or a next meeting, and I can't recall offhand what date that is, but I know we have it on our calendars. So we will we'll reiterate this survey, we'll recirculate it, and we will come together again, brief you on our changes, and then talk about cutting questions and getting it to a reasonable length. Does that sound like a plan to everyone? Okay.
Yeah, Caitlin, I think that's a good plan. I'm just wondering if the committee is interested, given that we've gone through this now, and I think we've all had an opportunity to consider these questions. Do we want to put together our own thoughts about feedback to Caitlin in terms of questions that we might want to prioritize or propose for cutting as well, so we can give you some guidance? I think if you can give us guidance, as you said, on what a survey length might be, what a good survey length might be, then we should also maybe all take an opportunity to look back through this ourselves and do our own prioritization of which questions we really do feel are important. And I have to agree with Mark and John. There's a lot of great questions in here that we probably need
I know everyone wants
otherwise.
yeah.
But in terms of what Recalc needs to do, I think we should really think long and hard about limiting this so we can get quality answers on the questions that are relevant.
Yep.
Yeah,
Makes a lot of sense.
if the Recalc members and anybody from Council on Aging, if we could funnel everything through me and Kevin, that would be preferable. That way we don't kind of have branches going off into different directions. And so that would be the most efficient way to get comments to staff. And then we'll put everything together and coordinate with UMass.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I was just taking some notes here. So as an action, I think the committee should do that and send comments to Jean and Kevin. Before we let you go, Caitlin, just so we know, at the moment, when is our next meeting that you're scheduled to be at?
It looks like May 25th is the next meeting, so we will work to get you a draft about a week ahead of that.
Okay. I had a May 18th date on here for some reason. Is that still?
Let's see.
Oh, I think that was the tentative Recalc forum. I think that's now been moved
To June 1.
June 1, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, all right, cool.
Mark.
Mark, go ahead.
John, do you want to maybe suggest a date by which Recalc members could provide that feedback so that we can kind of help inform Caitlin's group?
Yeah, if we can give ourselves a week by next Tuesday, get that feedback to Jean and Kevin, and then they can consolidate that and share it with Caitlin so that she can also give us something in prep for the meeting on the 25th. Is that okay, Kat? Is that enough time, Caitlin?
Yeah, that should work for us.
So that's by May 17th. And to Caitlin's point, anything that's missing, by all means, you can include that in the comments as well. Okay, any other comments or questions for Caitlin and the team? By all means, thank you. I think that
Yeah,
was
no,
very,
thanks
very
for sticking
thorough.
with us. I know it's a long conversation, usually is, but appreciate it. Good to see you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're just about at the end of our meeting. Let me just circle back a little bit here. So we're just, okay, Caitlin just ran off. So I just, I'm gonna, couple actions we had on our list. I haven't had a chance. I'm gonna go back through the community site data just to see where we are, which ones we've got. I know there were a couple more that were included in the package, so I'll update that list. I know I'm still one of the open items on that list, my own fault, but I've had so many things going on, it's not even funny, but anyhow, so I'll go back through that list. As far as the communication plan is concerned, I don't know if folks saw that the postcard made it out. Yay. So congratulations, Marilyn and team. That was great, get that out. And it does have the next forum listed as June 1st, as well as all of the details and information. So Great work there. Let me just see what else. So just in terms of upcoming activities, actually, I'm going to just quickly, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. So this was the communication plan that we put together. Jean, did you want to say something?
When you get to the June 1st, I just have a couple of questions for the forum, but go ahead.
Okay. So I'm maybe a little bit more laser focused on the communication plan because I think everybody really made it clear that this is something we have to do a better job at. So we did the select board report, and then the newsletter that did get up on the web. I know that. I don't know if it was emailed out or if there are print copies, but we certainly got the thing out there. We still have a question about this Pleasant Street Center. There was an action. Amy was going to talk to Phil at RCTV to see if we can find some support for this. Is Amy still? I'm sorry. Is Amy still on the line? Yes.
I'm here. I'm here, John.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't had a chance to.
Okay. Yeah, we talked that this was unfortunately something that is not on the top of your priority list. I get that. So I just want to make sure we don't lose it off the list at all. That's all.
Nope, I had sent him an email and I haven't heard back, so I can follow up again tomorrow.
Okay. So we are continuing to pull together the peer community information. So again, I'll follow up on that list. I think one of the questions we were asking was to see if we could find somebody that would take responsibility to kind of help collate and collect that information because we wanted to figure out how to assess that. I still think that's an open question. So we did get the postcard out again, which was the pre-community focus group or forum. And I don't know if that translated to email blasts yet. I think there's a question about, I know I do see some things that come out from Reading Recreation because I happen to be on their email list. Not sure if it's coming out from other places as well. We talked about potentially having some presence at Friends and Family Day coming up on June 11th. Is that still something the group is interested in? And if so, what would that be? What would we do? Would that we require some sort of again, communication plan about how that would fit into everything that we're doing here? Anybody have any comments on that?
Well, I have reserved a tent / table for that event. So again,
Now, is that, did you reserve it under Veteran Services or Elder Services?
yeah, just Elder and Human Services.
Okay.
Yep.
John, can I comment for a sec?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Thanks. So we, Council on Aging members, I know that last night there was a discussion about having some folks man the booth. And I'm wondering if one of the things we would want to do is allow people to sign up for kind of the newsletter. Very much what we did on the website already, where there's a sign up link. And I know that the council, one of your goals is to get more people involved, know who they are. Ideally, if they'd like to volunteer, that would be great too. And I think that it would be great to have more names kind of on our circulation list so that as there are updates, we can share the information out with them. And maybe that's a good goal, is to have a sign up sheet that's available there. And you know, if some recalc members are able to participate on the 11th too, that would be, you know, that probably is a bonus if that can fit.
myself, I have a 1 hour shift with the Trails Committee, but after that, I could devote all the rest of the time to the Recalc Council on Aging, booth.
And I plan to be there too. We have competing interests. We want people to sign up for pleasantries. We want people to give us contact information for the Council on Aging, and we want people to sign up for Recalc. We could have like a triplicate column, where may we put your email or something like that, but certainly willing to try our best.
We won't force them to prioritize though, right?
No, no.
Okay. Okay. Again, I'll continue to keep this updated. I'll send this back out to Kevin and Jean to communicate. Okay. All right, let's see what else. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Jean, you wanted to ask some questions about the next forum coming up on June 1st?
Yes, thank you. So we have a communications plan already, all the things that we did last time, press releases, message boards, email blasts. Of course, the postcard is great. That's top of the list. So everything's all queued up and drafted and ready to go. We have another flyer in production. But I just wanted to check in with the group and see if there was a particular focus or theme or something descriptive that anybody wanted to share about what this next public forum might do. I know UMass is flexible. We can kind of continue the way we have been and just have it be a third iteration of the kinds of things that we've been doing, or if it makes more sense to use this third meeting in a different way, that's another way to approach it. In other words, instead of having just people give comments, you could do breakout groups, you could do questions and polling with handheld devices. You could do any number of ways to do the feedback. And then
we don't have UMass on as well. I'm wondering what what their plan was, if they were just planning to do the same.
Well, they had asked me to find out from the group if there was anything in particular that the group would like the forum to focus on. I think generally their way of approaching it was the way it was done in the last two forums, and this would just be another opportunity for people to give the kind of feedback that they've given in the past. But if this wanted to be something different, I think we could certainly have a conversation. I mean, nothing crazy, but if it was really about, using this forum as a way to get at a specific thing or a specific handful of things, or maybe there are things on the survey that, we all decided, maybe make it too long, and we could maybe use the forum to get some of that feedback.
I was just thinking that we may end up with an opportunity to maybe take some of that information and sanity check it as well, to see if it's a relevant question, or maybe, to your point, a question that we decided to take off that we want to still get some feedback on. I don't know. What do people think about that? That's certainly one option or idea. Mark?
I think that could be fine. I think the one thing that's most important is to make sure it's a listening session more than a talking session. And I was able to go to the first session online and the second session in person. I thought the balance was about right. I don't think anybody left without being able to share their thoughts. It'd be lovely to get a little bit more discussion. I think the second session actually turned out there was some discussion taking place. but I think that's good. I think it's good to understand where people's questions are, where their concerns are, what's most important. I love the idea of some polling and getting a couple of answers, and maybe it relates to the questions, some of the questions in the survey that we think are going to help us with our answers. Make sure that kind of take a poll in the room and make sure that they really are. It's not just everybody raises their hand suddenly, which wouldn't be helpful. So I think I'm supportive of that idea, and just making sure that it's again mostly listening.
Yeah,
Michael,
we
did you
have
have-
we have the handheld devices. We've used them. IT has them. We have over 200. We've used them at town meeting. Right. Remember a few years ago, we passed them around at town meeting. We've used them at other public meetings. The tricky part there is, I don't, if it's going to be over Zoom and in person. So I'm not exactly sure how to do polling when it's hybrid.
Well, you can do polls in Zoom, and then so you'd have to kind of concatenate the data at the end, right? So
Right.
I guess that.
Michael,
Michael,
polls easy. Yeah.
Michael, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
I did briefly, but and my one thought was it'd be nice to, if you remember in the questionnaire, they talk about the 2%, 5%, and other things. And one of in the previous forum that I attended, people were very interested in sort of the global cost that this was going to be. And it might be useful to say a 2% increase in your taxes would facilitate a $10 million building or whatever it is. Because
I would strongly suggest we stay 100,000 miles away from that.
Yeah, that's why I dropped my hand, Mark.
Mark, you raise a really good point initially, and that is we want these really to be listening sessions. I didn't attend them in person. I was online for both, and I could just tell there was this sense that folks just wanted to ask all sorts of questions that we just didn't have the answers to. So we really have to be careful, because it'll become a free-for-all. Well, why can't we put it here, or what? It
costs $25 less if you put it there.
Right. So I do think we have to be a little careful, and we do have to, whatever we decide to do, to Jean and Caitlin's point, we have to make sure it's relatively structured and give folks the opportunity to provide the input. I mean, I do like the idea of if we get through the questionnaire and we have some items that we're not entirely sure about, those could be things we could add to the list for the June 1st forum, and see whether they make sense to get feedback on. That would be the only other, again, item that I think would be helpful. And I think hopefully Caitlin will, now having gone through a couple of the forums, heard some feedback, gone through the survey stuff with us, maybe she can do a little bit more tailoring to her presentation as well. I mean, I know people like the idea, like the small tables and group things. I just think that's really tough to manage, especially with people online as well. So that would be my only question about that. But in terms of writing a descriptive thing for Caitlin, Jean, somebody want to take a stab at concatenating all the stuff we've just talked about and put together I guess conceptually, I think we don't necessarily want to change too much of what she did, but maybe, focus in on some things where we think we have some holes, or potentially questions that we may not necessarily get to ask on the survey, or, other things that came up during some of the forums that push us to ask other questions. So I guess those are the three things I can think of generically in my mind to communicate to her.
Okay, no, that's helpful. I can work with Caitlin. Kevin and I will go back to her, and it works out nicely that May 25th she'll be back with the group, and then to the extent that there are questions that can be recycled into the public forum and taken off of the survey, then that could be a nice way to hit both times. Great, thank you.
Hey, Kevin, can you just remember when John comes back to add that as a line item action for the agenda for next time?
Yep.
Specific, I know we're going to review the survey, but I want to give us the heads up that we should also review the forum activity.
Hey, John, just asking a quick question. So Gene, do I remember when you did some of the forms for the Eastern Gateway, you had some tables and broke people into groups? And I don't know, it's not that with Zoom, if we can just guide someone to click when it says enter the breakout room, that actually works pretty effectively. And they'd run separately, but I think that's okay because what we're looking for is just somebody to take some notes about what was talked about. That might be, fun. I think it's a question of how long does the other stuff take? If you're already at 2 hours, maybe it's harder to do a breakout session, but if if we're at 1 hour and 15 minutes, maybe there's a chance to sit people around a table and get a little bit of interaction going on.
Yeah, it really depends on what else we have to cover that night, I think. Yeah, to your point, I think it can be done, but I'll get, Kevin and I'll get back with Caitlin and see and come up with some ideas so we can make it work.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just taking some notes. Who was supposed to take notes? We had an item on here about the status of focus group sessions. I'm going to skip that. I don't think we have any updates on that at the moment. Other than the fact that they have been occurring. Is that
yeah, we are moving forward with the focus groups as we've discussed. The having more residents was one of the things that we talked about, and having a focus groups of stakeholders and having a focus groups of I think we said town staff and a fourth one, I can't remember, but yeah, we're working with the team to populate those groups so that we can get them scheduled and on the calendar.
Sorry, that was me. I blipped out. Okay, schedule future recalc meetings. We have one on May 25th. Do we want to schedule another one beyond that just to put it on the calendar? And did we already do that?
I think we did.
We have May 25th, then we have June 1st. And that's all I have on my calendar after that. Do we want to put another date on the calendar? Either June 8th or June 15th. Anybody have any preference?
My preference would be the 8th. I'm not around on the 15th, but I'm just one person.
Anybody have any issues with June 8th?
8th for me.
I may not be in town, but I don't know the answer to that yet. So I'd say just go for it.
All right, let's tentatively put June 8th on the calendar, or not tentatively, let's put June 8th on the calendar for 7 p.m. just so we have it in the books. And if we have to change that, we can revisit that next time. Okay, it's 9:13. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, go around the room. Mark Doxler,
Yes.
John Parsons,
Yes.
Michael Coltman,
Aye.
Nora Bucko,
Yes.
John Sasso, yes. Okay,
Have a good evening, everyone.
thank you,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
evening.
everyone. Good night.
Appreciate it. Who do I send these notes to? Should I send them to you, Kevin?
You can send them to me. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I apologize. They're really, really rough. So,
Not a problem.
okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Mhm.